James Harden. What if the Thunder never traded James Harden? In 2012, after reaching the finals, the Thunder had a huge choice to make. They offered Harden a 4-year deal worth $55 million, but he wanted closer to the max. Rather than stretch their budget, they flipped him to the Rockets for Kevin Martin, Jeremy Lamb, and some picks. But if they kept Harden, this team could have been terrifying. With Harden, Kevin Durant, and Russell Westbrook all in their prime, the Thunder might have ruled the Western Conference for years. Championships would have been right there for the taking. Harden's role probably would have stayed smaller, maybe slowing down his rise to MVP level, but that trio's chemistry could have made them unbeatable. Plus, a dominant Thunder squad might have changed the whole league, forcing other teams to rethink their plans. Instead, they broke up what could have been a dynasty and left everyone wondering how many rings that young, loaded squad really could have won together. Derrick Rose. What if Derrick Rose never got injured? When the Bulls grabbed Rose with the #1 pick in 2008, he instantly lit up the league. Rookie of the Year, youngest MVP ever at 22, and leading the Bulls to a wild 62-win season in 2011. With Tibbs coaching and Rose exploding past defenders, the Bulls actually looked like they could take down Miami's super team, but then came the nightmare. First game of the 2012 playoffs, Rose tore his ACL and everything changed. He missed the entire next season, and more injuries just kept piling up. If he stayed healthy, the Bulls would have gone toe-to-toe with LeBron James every year, and Rose could have built a Hall of Fame career, stacking all-star appearances and deep playoff runs. With Joakim Noah, Oden, and Jimmy Butler rising, Chicago had the pieces. Instead, Rose fought through setbacks, adapted his game, and still gave fans unforgettable moments. Michael Jordan. What if the Trailblazers drafted Michael Jordan? In the 1984 draft, Portland had the second pick and desperately wanted a center, so they passed on Jordan and grabbed Sam Bowie. They thought their backcourt was set with Jim Paxson and Clyde Drexler, so they went all in on filling that center spot. But if they took Jordan instead, it would have been wild. Pairing Jordan with Drexler could have made them one of the most dangerous duos the league had ever seen, flying past defenders and lighting up the scoreboard every night. Portland might have turned into a full-on powerhouse in the West, stacking titles through the late 80s and 90s. And without Jordan in Chicago, the Bulls dynasty never happens, completely flipping the league's history. There's always the question of whether Portland's front office would have built the right team around him. But either way, Jordan's firepower alone could have changed everything for the Blazers and the entire NBA forever. Carmelo Anthony. What if the Pistons drafted Carmelo Anthony? In the 2003 draft, Detroit had the second pick and took Darko Milicic, passing on Anthony, who went right after to the Nuggets. Detroit already had a tough core with Chauncey Billups, Richard Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince, Ben Wallace, and Rasheed Wallace, so they figured they needed a big man, not another scorer. But if they grabbed Carmelo, things could have looked a lot different. He could have given them an instant scoring punch, making that 2004 title run even scarier. Long term, Anthony might have kept the Pistons on top of the East, stacking more finals trips and maybe more rings. Of course, there's the chemistry issue. Detroit's whole identity was about team play, and adding a high-volume rookie might have shaken things up. Even Rasheed Wallace thought they would have missed out on the title. But with Carmelo's talent, it's hard not to think Detroit could have built a lasting powerhouse and changed his whole career legacy. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to start posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Steph Curry. What if the Curry trade to the Bucks actually happened? Back in 2012, the Warriors were desperate to fix their frontcourt, and talks with the Bucks got serious. Golden State thought about trading Curry, who was battling constant ankle issues, but the Bucks medical staff waved them off, not liking what they saw with his injuries. Instead, the deal ended up sending Monte Ellis, Ekpe Udoh, and Kwame Brown to Milwaukee for Andrew Bogut and Steven Jackson. But if Milwaukee took the gamble on Curry, they would have landed a franchise-changing player. His shooting and playmaking could have completely reshaped their offense. And when they drafted Giannis in 2013, Curry's presence might have accelerated his rise, creating a ridiculous duo. Meanwhile, the Warriors holding on to Curry turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to them. He became the face of their dynasty, rewrote the league's style of play, and turned Golden State into a championship machine built around his insane shooting. Brandon Roy. What if Brandon Roy never got injured? When the Trailblazers picked Roy 6th overall in 2006, he looked like the future of the franchise. He won Rookie of the Year, made 3 straight All-Star teams, and had Portland climbing fast in the West. Roy did everything, scored from anywhere, made plays, and held his own on defense. But knee problems wrecked it all. With no cartilage in either knee, surgeries kept piling up, and by 2011, he had to retire at just 27. If Roy stayed healthy, he could have become one of the league's top shooting guards, making all NBA teams and maybe even getting into the Hall of Fame. The Blazers had LaMarcus Aldridge and Greg Oden, and with Roy leading, Portland might have gone deep in the playoffs and chased titles. He could have pushed teams like the Lakers and Spurs every year, making the West a whole lot tougher. His career could have been legendary instead of heartbreak. Kevin Durant. What if Kevin Durant's foot was not on the line against the Bucks? In Game 7 of the 2021 semifinals, Durant pulled off an insane turnaround jumper over PJ Tucker with just 1 second left. At first, it looked like a dagger 3 to win it, but replay showed his foot barely touching the line. Instead of the Nets going up by 1, the game got tied at 109, and the Bucks took it in overtime 115 to 111. If Durant's foot stayed behind that line, the Nets would have led by 1 with just a second to survive. Moving on to the Eastern Finals, Brooklyn could have been favorites to take the title, even with Kyrie and James Harden banged up. For Durant, it could have been another championship run added to his legacy. And the Bucks, losing that game, might have cranked up all the pressure on Giannis and left them stuck chasing their first ring. Chris Paul. What if Chris Paul got traded to the Lakers? Back in 2011, the Lakers thought they pulled off the perfect move. They were about to land Paul, the Rockets were set to grab Pau Gasol, and the Hornets would walk away with Lamar Odom, Kevin Martin, Luis Scola, Goran Dragic, and a first-round pick. But the NBA owned the Hornets, and they completely shut it down. David Stern called it basketball reasons, but it was really owners like Dan Gilbert panicking about the Lakers loading up again. If this went through, Paul and Kobe Bryant would have been brutal for the rest of the league. And the Lakers were chasing Dwight Howard too, so they were on the edge of building a monster team. Without Paul, the Clippers got him instead, and Lob City was born. The Lakers, they missed their shot, and their grip on the West fell apart fast. This trade could have flipped the whole balance of power in the league. Tim Duncan. What if Tim Duncan signed with the Magic? In the summer of 2000, the Magic had the money ready, offering Duncan a 6-year deal worth $67.5 million. Pairing him with Grant Hill and Tracy McGrady could have built a serious contender in the East. Duncan's dominance in the paint, Hill's all-around game, and McGrady's scoring could have turned Orlando into a nightmare for the rest of the league. Even with Hill's injury problems later on, having Duncan and McGrady alone might have kept the Magic pushing deep into the playoff. On the flip side, if Duncan left San Antonio, the Spurs would have fallen apart fast. No Duncan means no dynasty, and guys like Tony Parker and Manu might never have become stars. Greg Popovich's legendary coaching career could have looked a lot different too. Duncan's choice to stay in San Antonio ended up shaping the league for years, but the Magic were one Tim Duncan decision away from building their own powerhouse. Yao Ming. What if Yao Ming never got injured? Drafted first overall in 2002, Yao instantly became a force in the middle for the Rockets. With his massive frame and crazy touch for a big man, he averaged 19 points, over 9 rebounds, and nearly 2 blocks a game, stacking up 8 All-Star nods in 9 seasons and 5 All-NBA selections. But foot and leg injuries wrecked his prime, cutting his career short by his early 30s. If he stayed healthy, Yao could have played 12 to 15 seasons, easily topping 20,000 points and 10,000 rebounds. More importantly, with a healthy Yao next to Tracy McGrady, the Rockets had a real shot at deep playoff runs, maybe even finals appearances. Beyond the wins, a longer career would have taken his global impact even further, helping grow the league worldwide and opening doors for more international talent. Instead, injuries closed the chapter too soon, leaving fans wondering just how dominant Yao and the Rockets could have been. Kevin Durant. What if the Trailblazers drafted Kevin Durant? In 2007, Portland held the top pick and went with Greg Oden, hoping to lock down their center spot for the future. Oden's career, though, was wrecked by injuries, while Durant, taken second by Seattle, turned into one of the best scorers ever. If Portland picked Durant, he would have joined Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge to form a monster trio. Durant's unstoppable scoring, Roy's playmaking, and Aldridge's inside game could have made the Blazers a nightmare in the West. Instead of first-round exits, they might have made real playoff runs and kept the franchise steady for years. And beyond Portland, the whole league shifts. The Thunder likely never explode onto the scene, and Durant probably never joins the Warriors, which completely changes those championship battles. Portland could have been a powerhouse for the decade, with Durant leading the way and rewriting both his legacy and the entire NBA's balance of power. Kobe Bryant. What if the Hornets never traded Kobe? In the 1996 draft, the Hornets took a 17-year-old Kobe with the 13th pick, but flipped him to the Lakers for Divac. If they kept him, Charlotte's whole future could have changed. Pairing Kobe with Glenn Rice and Anthony Mason might have turned the Hornets into a playoff regular, maybe even pushing for deep runs in the East. But here's the thing, Kobe's rise was shaped by the Lakers setup. Surrounded by veterans and coached by Phil Jackson, he developed into a killer. In Charlotte, without that support, his growth might have taken a different turn. And for the Lakers, missing out on Kobe means no early 2000s dynasty with Shaq. Those 3 straight titles probably never happened. Plus, Kobe staying in Charlotte might have shifted power to the East, shaking up rivalries and playoff battles across the league. That one draft day move ended up shaping the entire NBA for years. Len Bias. What if Len Bias never passed away? In 1986, the Celtics grabbed Bias with the 2nd pick, expecting him to be the spark for their next great run. He had the athleticism, the scoring, and the defensive edge to slide right into that veteran squad with Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish. If Bias joined that core, Boston could have kept their dynasty alive longer, staying on top while their stars aged. His versatility would have given them extra firepower, making them even tougher in a brutal Eastern Conference. The rivalries with Detroit and Chicago could have gotten even nastier, maybe slowing down the Bulls' rise. Some even believed Bias had the potential to challenge Michael Jordan for the league's spotlight. Beyond the court, Bias's story shook the sports world, pushing drug policy reforms and changing how colleges looked after their athletes. He might have gone down as one of the greats and kept the Celtics chasing banners through the 90s. Steph Curry. What if the Timberwolves drafted Steph Curry? In 2009, Minnesota held both the 5th and 6th picks, but went with Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn, leaving Curry for the Warriors at 7. If the Timberwolves took Curry, their entire franchise could have flipped. Curry's shooting and playmaking might have finally dragged Minnesota out of irrelevance and into the playoffs. With his rise to MVP level, he would have elevated his teammates and completely changed their style of play. Minnesota's constant coaching carousel and front office chaos might have settled too, with a real superstar to build around. Beyond the Timberwolves, the whole league feels different. Without Curry, the Warriors probably never become a dynasty, and Minnesota becomes the center of the NBA's three-point revolution. Those championships and rivalries from the last decade could have played out in a totally new way. Instead, Minnesota passed twice, letting the future face of the league fall right into Golden State's hands. Shaq. What if Shaq never left the Magic? Drafted first overall in 1992, Shaq turned the Magic into a real contender fast, even leading them to the finals by 1995. But by 1996, contract talks fell apart, and the Lakers swooped in with a monster 7-year deal worth $120 million. If Shaq stayed in Orlando, though, everything changes. He and Penny Hardaway were a nightmare pairing, and with Shaq anchoring the middle, the Magic could have made multiple finals runs and maybe grabbed a title or two. Keeping Shaq might have taken some pressure off Penny too, maybe even helping him avoid the injuries that derailed his career. Without Shaq, the Lakers probably miss out on their early 2000s dynasty, and their whole pursuit of stars looks way different. Plus, with Shaq staying east, those battles with the Bulls and other rivals would have gotten a whole lot tougher. Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson. What if they never got hurt in the 2019 finals? The Warriors were already limping into that series, but losing Durant to an Achilles tear and Klay to an ACL tear was brutal. If both stayed healthy though, it's hard to see the Raptors keeping up. Durant's scoring would have cracked Toronto's defense wide open, and Klay's sharpshooting, plus his tough defense on the perimeter, could have made all the difference. With both weapons available, the Warriors' offense would have been overwhelming, and their defense much tighter, especially against Kawhi Leonard. Momentum might have flipped fast in those close games, and the Warriors could have pushed for a third straight title. Even Klay himself believed they had it in the bag if he stayed on the floor. Instead, injuries opened the door for Toronto, ended the Warriors' dynasty run, and shifted the whole league's balance. Healthy, they might have walked away champions yet again, the first three-peat since the Shaq and Kobe Lakers. LeBron James. What if LeBron never left the Cavaliers? In 2010, Cleveland had just finished with the league's best record at 61-21, but fell short in the playoffs again. If LeBron stayed, the front office would have felt even more pressure to land big-name help, but convincing stars to join him in Cleveland was always tricky. Without the Miami move, LeBron probably misses out on those 2 rings with D. Wade and Chris Bosh, which definitely changes the way people talk about his legacy. And for Cleveland, keeping LeBron would have kept the franchise's value high and the city's economy buzzing with packed arenas and playoff runs. Plus, his Miami decision kicked off the whole player empowerment wave, with stars choosing their teams and building super squad. If he stayed home, that whole trend might have been delayed. Instead, leaving changed everything. For his career, for the Cavaliers, and honestly, for the way the entire league operates today. But for the rings, who knows? Grant Hill. What if Grant Hill never got hurt? Drafted 3rd overall by the Pistons in 1994, Hill came out of the gate dominating. He snagged co-rookie of the year, made multiple all-star teams, scoring, rebounding, playmaking, and locking down on defense. By 2000, though, his career got wrecked by a brutal ankle injury that led to endless surgeries and even a life-threatening infection. But if Hill stayed healthy, he could have chased MVPs and led deep playoff runs. His skill set was so unique, Detroit might have built a contender around him, or later in Orlando, he and Tracy McGrady could have terrorized the East for years. Hill's smooth game and all-around dominance had him on track for legendary status. Without those injuries, cutting his prime short, he could have easily been talked about alongside the absolute greats in NBA history, not just as one of the biggest what-ifs. Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. What if the Warriors traded them for Chris Paul? Back in 2011, Golden State actually tried to pull this off, offering both Curry and Thompson to the Hornets for Paul. But Paul did not want to commit long-term, and the whole thing fell apart. If the trade happened, New Orleans could have been dangerous fast. Curry and Thompson's combined shooting would have given them a lethal backcourt and maybe pushed them into real playoff contention. For the Warriors, though, it could have been a disaster. Even with Paul's elite skills, if he bounced after a short stay, they'd have lost both of their future cornerstones for nothing. No Splash Brothers means no dynasty, no revolution in three-point shooting, and no run of titles that flip the league upside down. Rivalries, championships, all of it looks different without Curry and Thompson lighting up arenas. That failed trade quietly ended up saving Golden State and shaping the entire future of the NBA. Kobe Bryant. What if Kobe got traded in 2007? That summer, Kobe was furious with the Lakers, fed up with the slow development of guys like Andrew Bynum, and pushed hard for a trade. The Bulls were his top choice, but Kobe refused to go if they had to give up Oden, which killed that deal. The Pistons actually had an agreement in place, but Kobe shot it down using his no-trade clause because he had no interest in playing in Detroit. Even the Mavericks got close, almost pulling off a blockbuster that would have paired Kobe with Dirk Nowitzki, but Lakers management backed out last minute. If any of those trades happened, everything changes. In Chicago, Kobe might have been the superstar to push them back into relevance. In Detroit, he could have led a proven team back to the finals. And in Dallas, teaming with Dirk might have taken down the Spurs' hold on the West. No matter the destination, the Lakers dynasty likely never happens. Magic Johnson. What if the Jazz got Magic Johnson? Back in 1976, the New Orleans Jazz went after veteran guard Gail Goodrich from the Lakers, but NBA rules at the time meant they had to cough up draft picks as compensation, including their first rounder in 1979. That pick turned into the #1 overall selection, and the Lakers snatched up Magic Johnson. If the Jazz kept that pick, they could have built their future around Magic, teaming him with Pistol Pete in what could have been an electric backcourt. With that kind of firepower, the Jazz might have found enough success to avoid their move to Utah entirely. For the Lakers, missing out on Magic would have been devastating. He was the heartbeat of their 80s dynasty, leading them to 5 championships and lighting up the league. Without Magic, the entire era of Showtime likely never happened, and the NBA's balance of power looks wildly different for years to come. Greg Oden. What if Greg Oden never got hurt? Drafted first overall in 2007, Oden came in with sky-high expectations as a dominant 7-foot center out of Ohio State. His defense and rebounding were already elite, and Portland hoped he'd anchor their front court for years. But before he played a single NBA game, knee surgery sidelined him for the entire 2007 season. Things only got worse from there. Fractured kneecap, more surgeries, and his career never had a real chance to take off. If Oden stayed healthy, Portland might have built a powerhouse around him. With Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge, Oden could have given the Blazers a legitimate shot at running the West. His size and skill could have made him a perennial all-star, and maybe even a Hall of Famer. The NBA landscape shifts too, with Portland potentially challenging the top teams of that era. Instead, injuries turned one of the league's brightest prospects into a massive what-if. Bill Walton. What if Bill Walton never got hurt? Coming out of UCLA, Walton was unstoppable, leading the Bruins to 2 championships and an 88-game winning streak. Portland saw the same greatness, grabbing him first overall in 1974. By the 76 season, Walton delivered big time, carrying the Blazers to their only title and grabbing Finals MVP. He followed that up by winning League MVP, looking every bit like a future legend. But injuries wrecked everything. Foot problems, endless surgeries, and missed seasons kept him stuck on the sidelines, limiting him to just 468 games across 14 years. If Walton stayed healthy, Portland might have built a dynasty around him, stacking up championships. His elite passing and defense could have changed how people viewed centers, and his legacy might have included piles of all-star appearances and accolades. Instead, injuries forced what should have been an all-time career into flashes of brilliance. leaving fans forever wondering what might have been. Bill Russell. What if the Hawks never traded Bill Russell? In 1956, the St. Louis Hawks grabbed Russell with the second pick, but flipped him to the Celtics for Ed McCauley and Cliff Hagan. If they kept him, Russell alongside Bob Pettit could have built an absolute powerhouse frontcourt. The Hawks were already good, making finals runs in 57, 60, and 61, and they even won the title in 58. But with Russell, they might have stacked up even more championships and completely owned that era. Meanwhile, Boston's dynasty never happens. Without Russell's defense and leadership, the Celtics lose the anchor that carried them to 11 titles in 13 seasons. He set the tone for their entire identity, turning them into a defensive machine. If Russell stayed with the Hawks, the entire balance of the league shifts, and the Celtics' legendary dominance probably fades before it ever starts. One trade completely reshaped the future of the NBA for decades. Bernard King. What if Bernard King never got hurt? In the mid-80s, King was tearing up the league, leading the NBA in scoring with nearly 33 points a game and dropping a wild 60 points on Christmas Day. His playoff run in 1984 was legendary, torching defenses with almost 35 points a night and pushing the Celtics to a full 7 games. But in March of 1985, disaster hit. A brutal knee injury with a torn ACL, meniscus damage, and a fractured femur. If King stayed healthy, he could have easily topped 25,000 career points, stacking up scoring titles and all-NBA honors. More importantly, with Patrick Ewing joining the Knicks in '85, King and Ewing could have been a nightmare duo in the East, shaking up the power balance against teams like the Celtics and Pistons. Instead, the injury stole his prime, though King still fought back for an all-star season later, proving he never lost that scoring touch. Michael Jordan. What if Jordan never retired in 1993? After 3 straight titles, Jordan shocked everyone by walking away from the game, worn down by exhaustion and grief after his father's death. But if he stayed, the Bulls were set to keep rolling. Even without him, in the 1994 season, they still won 55 games, with Scottie Pippen playing like a superstar. With Jordan still in the lineup, Chicago likely pushes past the Knicks and makes a real run at a 4th straight title. His presence could have kept the Bulls on top, possibly stealing those back-to-back championships the Rockets grabbed in '94 and '95. Without Jordan's break, the league's entire balance shifts, and we might have seen an unthinkable 8 straight titles for Chicago. Jordan's legacy, already untouchable, would have hit even crazier heights. Instead, his time away opened the door for others, and while he still came back to win 3 more, the dynasty might have been even bigger. San Antonio Spurs. What if the Spurs got the rebound in the 2013 finals? With just over 5 seconds left in Game 6, the Spurs led 95-92 and were a single rebound away from a championship. But Chris Bosh snatched the miss, kicked it to Ray Allen, and his corner 3 tied the game, flipping all the momentum. If San Antonio secured that board, they probably close out Miami right there, adding another title to their dynasty. Tim Duncan grabs his 5th ring, which boosts his legacy into an even higher tier among the all-time greats. On the other side, LeBron James would have faced massive heat for another finals loss, and that Miami super team might have looked a lot less unbeatable. The ripple effects could have stretched into roster moves and retirements, maybe even speeding up the Spurs' transition to the next era. One rebound could have erased Miami's repeat and handed San Antonio another banner for their legendary collection. Luka. What if the Suns drafted Luka? In the 2018 draft, Phoenix held the top pick, but went with DeAndre Ayton, passing on Luka even though he was already EuroLeague MVP at just 19. If they took Luka, pairing him with Devin Booker could have built one of the most dangerous backcourts in the league. Luka's playmaking would have taken pressure off Booker, giving the Suns 2 elite offensive weapons right out of the gate. With Luka's impact, Phoenix might have skipped past the long rebuild and jumped straight into playoff contention, possibly reaching success even earlier than their 2021 finals run. Plus, his star power could have helped draw more talent to the roster. Meanwhile, the Western Conference shifts completely, since Dallas never lands Luka, and the Mavericks' rise changes instantly. Instead, Phoenix missed their shot, and while Ayton played his role in their finals push, Luka's rise in Dallas, and now with the Lakers, made the Suns' draft decision look like a massive missed opportunity. Ben Wilson. What if Ben Wilson never passed away? Back in 1984, Wilson was the top high school player in the country, a 6'8" point forward out of Chicago with the vision and skill to draw early comparisons to Magic Johnson. He likely would have joined Illinois, teaming up with future stars like Nick Anderson and Kendall Gill. That squad could have pushed the Fighting Illini to national titles, flipping the college basketball scene. Once in the NBA, Wilson's mix of size, skill, and basketball IQ had him lined up for stardom. He could have been a multi-position nightmare, maybe even on track for a Hall of Fame career, shaping the future of the game. Off the court, Wilson's rise from Chicago's South Side might have inspired real change, giving hope to countless kids facing tough environments. His legacy still lives through players like Derrick Rose, but if Wilson's story had continued, it might have become one of the greatest in basketball history. Kawhi Leonard. What if the Pacers never traded Kawhi Leonard? In 2011, Indiana picked Leonard 15th overall, but shipped him to the Spurs for George Hill, along with the rights to Davis Bertans and Erasem Lorbeck. If they kept Kawhi, Indiana's defense could have reached an entirely different level. Leonard's lockdown ability, which later earned him 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, would have been a perfect fit next to Paul George, forming one of the nastiest perimeter duos in the league. We've seen this duo, but not while they were both young and hungry. The Pacers were already pushing the Heat to the brink in the playoffs, and with Kawhi's two-way game developing, they might have had the extra firepower to get over the top. His growth into a Finals MVP and superstar could have built long-term stability for Indiana, maybe even turning them into serious title contenders. Meanwhile, the Spurs would have lost the player who helped drive their 2014 championship run. One draft day deal ended up swinging the futures of both franchises completely. Penny Hardaway. What if Penny Hardaway never got hurt? Drafted 3rd overall in 1993, Penny exploded onto the scene with a rare mix of size, vision, and smooth scoring that had people comparing him to Magic Johnson. By year 2, he was already an All-NBA first-teamer, putting up over 20 points and 7 assists a night. With Shaq by his side, the Magic were looking like the league's next powerhouse, and Penny was right at the heart of it, but injuries wrecked it all. A torn meniscus in the '96 playoffs went undiagnosed for months, and by the time he got surgeries in 2000, his explosiveness was gone. If he stayed healthy, Penny could have kept his all-star level play well into the 2000s, maybe winning titles with Shaq and locking down a Hall of Fame spot. Instead, injuries cut his prime short, and the NBA lost one of the most exciting, gifted guards of his generation, Ralph Sampson. What if Ralph Sampson never got hurt? Coming into the league at 7'4" with the agility of a guard, Sampson was built to dominate. He won Rookie of the Year in 1984 and made 4 straight All-Star teams, looking like a future legend next to Hakeem as the Rockets' Twin Towers. But in 1986, a brutal fall against the Celtics triggered his decline. A year later, a torn knee cartilage finished the job, wrecking his mobility and cutting his prime short. If Sampson stayed healthy, he could have kept up his all-star level play into the early 90s, stacking up All-NBA honors. With both him and Hakeem at full strength, the Rockets might have snagged a title in the mid-80s and changed the league's power structure. Plus, Sampson's unique blend of size and skill could have inspired the evolution of big men way earlier. Instead, injuries turned a potential dynasty into a major what-if. Dirk Nowitzki. What if the Bucks never traded Dirk Nowitzki? In the 1998 draft, Milwaukee grabbed Dirk at 9th overall, but shipped him off, along with Pat Garrity, to the Mavericks for Robert Tractor Traylor. Back then, international scouting was shaky, and Milwaukee thought Traylor could be their force in the paint. But if they kept Dirk, pairing him with Ray Allen and Glenn Robinson could have given the Bucks one of the most dangerous trios in the East. Dirk's stretch shooting and versatility might have totally reshaped Milwaukee's style, turning them into serious contenders through the early 2000s. Plus, with Milwaukee's strong German heritage, Dirk could have felt right at home, maybe even thriving faster. Instead, the Bucks ended up with little impact from Traylor, while Dirk turned into a legend in Dallas, leading the Mavericks to a 2011 title and becoming one of the greatest forwards ever. Keeping Dirk could have completely rewritten Milwaukee's entire franchise history. Petrović. What if Petrović never passed away? By the 1993 season, Petrović had become one of the NBA's deadliest scorers, averaging over 22 points per game while shooting better than 50% from the field and nearly 45% from 3. Despite that, he somehow got snubbed from the All-Star game, but his rise was undeniable. Had he continued, Petrović likely racks up multiple All-Star appearances and All-NBA honors, pushing his name into the league's elite. With the Nets, he was building a strong core alongside Derek Coleman and Kenny Anderson, and they could have grown into real contenders in the tough 90s Eastern Conference. Beyond the numbers, Petrović was already a trailblazer for international players, breaking barriers and proving that European talent could thrive in the NBA. A longer career from Petrović might have accelerated the league's global growth even faster. His tragic passing froze what was becoming an incredible story, leaving behind a legacy of brilliance and endless what-ifs. Sabonis. What if Sabonis never got hurt? In the early 80s, Sabonis was already a sensation in Europe, dominating with Žalgiris Kaunas and leading the Soviet Union to Olympic gold in 1988, and that was while battling injuries. But multiple Achilles tears and lingering knee and foot problems stole his prime, keeping him away from the NBA until he was 31. Even then, with the Trailblazers, Sabonis still showed flashes of brilliance. If he stayed healthy though, Sabonis could have entered the league much earlier and gone toe-to-toe with the likes of Hakeem and David Robinson, stacking up all-star appearances and rewriting what people expected from a big man. His passing, shooting, and skill could have pushed Portland over the top in the 90s, maybe delivering a championship. Beyond just the Blazers, a fully healthy Sabonis might have reshaped the center position altogether, inspiring a generation of versatile bigs way before the modern era truly arrived. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.